I'm going to start. There's a screen that says student leadership and safe routes to school visible.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to begin. Hi, my name's Arthur. I've been asked, I'm now with Feet First, who you must know strives to make walking safe, accessible, and enjoyable for all Washingtonians. Washington. Could someone say that word?
Washingtonians.
Washingtonians.
People in
Okay,
Washington.
people in Washington. I'm in British Columbia. This is why I'm struggling with that. I know how to read. I'm going to say that my goal in this webinar and my entire interactions with Feet First is to make student leadership more visible, more exciting, and more practiced by Washingtonians. How's that? This is the first of 4 webinars. This is the most structured of them. What is student leadership in San Francisco School? What's achieved? And then the rest of them are simply to find out what's happening and how we can make it more exciting, make it more visible, make it more likely that people are going to practice this, and that anything that Feet First does, anything that we're trying to do, is informed and is really effective in galvanizing the state in this direction. By way of introduction, I say that my title is Youth Engagement Facilitator and Trainer, and I'm out of Vancouver, BC. And I have been doing this since the 90s. I started working with high schools in 1999 because there was no program to build off of. There was workplace and there was elementary. And it just seemed like the most logical and the only practical way was to work with students themselves. An outsider couldn't do it. A parent couldn't do it. A teacher couldn't do it. It has to be done through student leadership. And so I use the term student leadership when it's youth engagement in a school setting. And the image at the top, the climate emotions wheel, has anyone seen this before? Climate emotions wheel. There's a link in there. So I have 1 thumbs up. Briefly, the research behind managing climate emotions is pointing to one way out of the anger, sadness, and fear is through positivity, and that's generated through climate action done collaboratively. And this is exactly what student leadership is all about. The young group in their community, they achieve some success, they become inspired, and they inspire other people. So this is the end goal that we're looking towards in terms of doing something like this and moving forward. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask, there's not many people on here, but let's just see who's in here and what part of the state are you from? And just to order it, and I hope this is not confusing, but I'm just north of the border. So let's start north and work our way down. So who thinks they're closest to the north? And pipe in and speak and turn on your camera if that's convenient. If it isn't, then just put something in the chat.
Hi, I'm Libby and I work in Bellingham, Washington, so just south of the border.
Welcome, Bellingham.
And I work for Smart Trips, which is our metropolitan planning organization's our trip commute reduction program. So I work with all ages, senior citizens, elementary school, middle school, high school, and we do bike, bus, walk, rideshare type stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have no idea who's between me and the border, so I'll just assume that I'm next. I'm Rob Fellows. I live in Seattle. I'm on the Feet First board, and pretty excited about this project. That's and I work in transportation.
In between you and I, Rob, but I am Adele Piers. I'm down in Olympia I'm a new member of WashDOT. That's Washington State Department of Transportation. And I have been brought on as an education and encouragement planner. So I'm working on the active transportation division, and I'm running the bike ed in schools, the e-bike lending library launching soon, the e-bike rebate program, and generally trying to get to grips with everything that I need to know to encourage people to use active transportation forms.
Welcome.
And I'm Steve Butler. I'm one of the 3 co-chairs of the American Planning Association, Washington Chapter's Youth and Planning Task Force. So really glad to be here, and we're looking for different ways to engage youth.
Steve, can I ask, where are you in the
Oh, I'm
States?
sorry. Yes, we're in Seattle. For a little bit, we're moving our offices to Tacoma. So Bellingham's closer, but
I'll recap. We're asking people to introduce themselves, moving from north to south. If it doesn't work out that way, that's fine, but that's the goal.
We have 2 in the chat.
Oh, thank you for, I can't see that. Okay,
Yeah.
so could you read those out, Rob, since you're there?
Yeah, Colleen, I think. Colleen Sink says, I think Aaron and I can claim furthest. We're both from Michigan, but am joining with the interest to learn about this framework in Washington. And Michelle Walker, not in Washington, but in the Bay Area. I work with Alameda County Safe Routes to School with our high school program, interested in learning what you all are doing.
I have worked with Alameda County before. This is very good. So everyone's chimed in?
I think
Okay.
that's, yeah.
Rob, will you keep an eye on the chat? It's only so much I can do.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
I'm kidding. I was curious if we had anyone from Spokane. Spokane and Seattle are the exact same latitude. I didn't know that. So student leadership is the term that we're using. For me, it's synonymous with youth engagement when you're talking about a school environment. So some people might define it differently, but to me, they're the same. Youth engagement happens when young people, participate in meaningful opportunities and roles that allow them to build on their strengths, take on responsibilities, and contribute to decisions that affect themselves and others. Sorry. I've been doing this work since the 90s, and the model that I have used to share this and to follow the work with young people, this model has a bit of a cyclical element to it. There's 2 arrows in there that are not part of the model, but I wanted to explain 2 points briefly. This is a short session. The purple arrow shows that we're not starting from the base. We're not starting from nothing. Even 9-year-old student leaders have life experience in home, in the community, in the classroom. They commute to and from school. They've been doing it for a few years. They know a lot. The yellow arrow is an indication that as the recruiting builds in and there's some momentum, there's usually a little bit of a, you settle into things and you lose some momentum. And the way out of momentum I've seen is through skill building. So as people start to learn new skills, there's the motivation rebuilds. So there's more on that later, but that's just to give it a start. So student leadership in Safe Routes to School, this is talking about coaching. This is about talking about coaching a small group of students. So the adult facilitator, this is what we're looking towards, coaches. And we're talking about a small group of student leaders, 6 to 12 students, who are volunteers. So this is not a full class assignment, and it's not assigned to any group of people. It's people who choose to get there. And there's a variety of ways that we can bring people on board. But that's just the goal of the first goal of the adult facilitator is to recruit. The next one is to support, so that it's a cohesive team. Just think about you getting a job at a new place. No one expects you to be off and running in the first few days. You are becoming a cohesive team. You know the area that you're working in. Your supervisor, hopefully, will recognize your own personal motivations and objectives for joining this work, and that the environment is fun and creative, so that people enjoy themselves, so that that allows them to express their creativity, feel inventive, and stay. You want retention. And to me, that's a great sign of success, is if a student leader group stays, because that means that their motivation continues and builds. The adult facilitator coaches. So they help the students to respond to this specific school. So they have to do some research to find out what's going on with the commuting habits there. The group builds to the strengths of each student, and there's empowerment so that they are valid decision makers, that they can make a difference, informed difference. And so they are empowered. This is a group of grade 4 student leaders from a school that I worked with. And one of the students said that it's a way to be a leader without seeming bossy. It is tough to make changes in the school community and to have some credibility. And so that's what this program does, especially when it's got the support of the school administration and possibly the municipality and the state, something larger than that. So the picture I just showed you of those students at a table, this is the event that they hosted. And I was not behind the table. I was outside taking photographs, and I'm taking this here. This was entirely managed by the students. Now, they didn't start this on their first day. We built up to that strength. Their principal said that this is exactly how we can make change. The last line is the key in providing that group with leadership and social significance. So this isn't just a group of students on their own who are doing something, which is nothing wrong with that. But the fact that they had the endorsement and they had the goals, the support of the administration is quite valuable. It should be fun. My line is that fun learning is not trivial. And the research behind it is positive emotions are conducive to creativity, expansion, and looking for and seizing opportunities. And so you want this. You want it to be fun, because fun leads to comfort, which leads to creativity, which leads to confidence, which with some structure and some goals, you can achieve them. And to me, the greatest sign of a successful program is retaining your student leaders. Again, they're volunteers. There's no course grade associated with this. So there's 2 points that I wanted to shine a light on at the beginning part is you recruit for whatever means. You ask it through a teacher, you put it through announcements, you put it through social media, you find out who wants to show up. And one of the first questions is asking, why did you sign up? So this is an example from one school. I apologize, the print is small in order to get everything in there, but you can see clearly that there was a one center dominant response, with 35% of the votes was reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So you could see that this is possibly an environmental group type of leaning. They could be anything, could be across the board. My point in this is that there's a couple that are more dominant, and yes, okay, that's what the program's about. But I want to remind people that all of those other outliers, everything was chosen by at least someone. So they're all important to keep in mind. They may not be the big component of it, but it's good to remember who's here for their leadership skills, because you can respond to that. The path forward is so diverse, and it's basically being invented as you go. To keep these things in mind is quite valuable. And that's where part of the retention comes up. The next point, which is more important, is how do you want to be seen by the peers at your school? Do you want to be seen as friendly, or, well, this school, the top 3 are friendly, knowledgeable, and creative. So this is not about environmental. This is not about being clever. They want it to be, well, it's a bit of both, but this is how they are painted. In this example, you can see that there's a few things that were not chosen, so you can let those go. But even the smaller outliers, they're worth keeping in mind that this is how people want to be seen. There's more I could talk about this and how they want to be visible, who wants to be visible. Some people want to be invisible. They want to be active members who don't have visibility in the school. Well, keep that point in mind. What have young student leaders achieved? So I'm only going to show you 2 examples. This is the very beginnings of it. I'm sure you know that young people can bring tremendous growth to what they're doing and potential. For whatever reason, without going into the background of it, a principal asked if I could meet with some students and let's see if we could do something in this immediately. So after 2 hours meeting with 7 grade 4 and 5 students on a Tuesday, the next day, the car to walk ratio completely flipped. It was amazing. The parents and the teachers at the school, when you stood at the school gate, looked out to the neighborhood, they said, it's like there's no school today. This is like a Pro D day. Or a national holiday. Like there's no traffic in front, but you turn around and the school was filled with parents and students. And this was simply because these students had the initiative to go. They went to every class. They made impassioned speeches. They said this, 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 this. And those students in the classrooms went home and said, we can't drive tomorrow. We just can't drive tomorrow. Now, this is not something that you can sustain, but it shows how immediately, like this is remarkable. I think this is quite remarkable. Big impact over short term. Well, let's look at the opposite. This is a different school. It's a K-5 school, so the grade leaders were grade 5s. Through a variety of transportation whichevers, we did audits and surveys in October. And then they said, can you reduce car trips by 20% to meet? And I said, yeah, that's 1 day a week. Yes. And so student group leaders got galvanized. We started up in May, just before they did any kind of outreach. We did a assessment. I'm only showing you the car. There's walk, the other parts of it, but it looks complicated with everything else. But if you just look at the car, purple is whatever it is, blue a little bit higher, and then they get to work. So June 16th is Walk on Wednesday. It's a 1-day event, but car trips just plummet. Okay, fine. I don't hold a lot of significance to the event days because there's a lot of effort that goes into that hoopla. But 1 week later, when the whole thing was over, we're coming to the last weeks of school, the numbers were quite a bit lower than before. They were not as low as the event day, but they were quite a bit lower. But you might guess the reason behind showing this slide is that in September, which is a whole new school year, the grade 5 student leaders have left, and it's still not much higher than right after the event day. So this lasting impact into the new school year was beyond the work of the student leaders. It was about parents finding strategies to change their way of going about this. At this school, the students, again, were instrumental. They were visible. And this is the principal saying that they're empowered to know that they can make a difference. And this is what student leadership is all about. But it doesn't happen on its own. And it requires policymakers and funders who are willing to bring along the coach. That's the difference. If it's a teacher that has to do it, the teacher's not going to know what's happening at other schools. And that cross-pollination of, well, here's what another school did, or here's how another school overcame that obstacle is extremely valuable. And then to have the students meet from time to time on a Pro D day is a really logical day that none of them have school, and you can use one of the schools to bring in the student leaders from a couple of schools. And that initiative, momentum, inspiration builds. So we're back to this positivity follows from direct action done collaboratively. And that's really what student leadership's all about in this capacity. So how much could we cover in a short bit of time? Just a little bit of a snapshot. My hope is that there'll be some questions, there'll be some discussion, there'll be some things that people want to contribute that we all want to hear. We've got some time for that. The look for May 8th next week is to hear what you're already doing, what's already happening across Washington State with Washingtonians, and then find out what we could add to that as a group of people who are discussing things that, oh, here's where you're stumbling over. Well, have you tried this? Or here's what happened somewhere else. And I will again repeat, or I will acknowledge that there's people from Michigan and California. Wonderful. You're welcome to be participating on this as well. I'd ask that you'd put an email to me. I'll put the email in the chat, so you can just press on it as a link, and that we can build up an agenda for next week about what people are talking about. But at this point, I would open up a chat and ask, not that chat, open up the floor to hear what people have, either questions or comments or something that you think should be added at this point. Or I'll ask questions.
Arthur, is it worth mentioning the Feet First discussions about this? A lot of the work that's been done in your area, in the area you're talking about, has been aimed at elementary school kids. But one of the things we're thinking about is middle school and high school being maybe more of an opportunity for that leadership development period to kick in. And they may have more autonomy to change their travel behavior without having to convince their parents to do it. Is
That's valid. Yes, thank you.
I'm curious when you mentioned, if you can get school districts or municipalities on board, and I'm curious if you have any experience you can share with examples of that, because I think, from my position, I think this is amazing. Like, I'd love to see this in schools. But I also know schools are really overloaded and have a lot of demands made on them. And so how to balance that kind of, if it was led by the school district or the municipality, how to balance that with it really being a kind of like, it's not a top down, it's a ground up approach, through the kids.
Okay, good. Nicely put. The real work is not done by the school or the school district. And to be saying that we have someone else coming in, we have someone from Feet First coming in or somewhere else, that doesn't overwhelm a school at all. If they hear we have a website that you can implement, they're saying we're overwhelmed. But the model we're talking about here is having a person go to the school. Think of the analogy of soccer. Imagine having kids soccer with no coaches. It's like, well, here's a soccer ball. This should become efficient. It's not going to happen. The high school program that I started in 1999, which had some pickup in Alameda County, needs that person coming in there. And all of my career, I've been told, well, no one's going to invest that much money into this type of reality. And 25 years have passed. But with the element of managing climate anxiety, which is getting some traction in terms of mental health awareness, could make that difference. And it's the exact same model, collective action, direct action done collaboratively. So back to your question is, we're not asking a school district to take it on. We're asking a school district to acknowledge and make space for that coach to come in. And the funding could come through mental health or transportation or something else in the education phase. So a school, if I was to approach a school and say, this is what I'm prepared to do, the school doesn't say we're too busy. That's not the response. If there's a person to do it.
This is something we would fundraise around. We don't have this is not a funded program, so it's something that we would promote for funding, for donations and grants.
The coach and the materials.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
we need some staff who are doing this work and developing the materials and going out and doing the work. Right.
And I do want to shine a light. Feet First right now is saying, well, this is what we want to do, but let's make sure people in Washington State know that this is our intention, so that if someone's off and running in one part of the state, well, let's know about that and let's collaborate so that no one is working in isolation and we're duplicating. So that's part of what this is about. It's like finding what's going on in these different cities that are or towns. People are doing things. I'm conscious of time and there's a pause, so I always want to jump in and say that I think of this as Jell-O. It's like it fits the mold. Whatever the mold is, we fit. If I show up and say I want to work with grade 5 students and the principal says they're busy working on a play, can you work with the grade 4s instead? The answer is yes. If it's a middle school, if it's a high school, the answer is yes, because it's all adapted by the people in the school. It's adapted by those student leaders. So I have worked in other countries and they'll say, well, what do you know about Polynesian culture in New Zealand? I said, I don't need to know that. I mean, there's some elements of basic human respect, but they are going to do that. So it can fit under whatever the circumstances. So Rob said we want to aim towards middle or high school. Yes, but if there's this, if there's someone who said we really want to work with their grade sixes, it's like, yes, that's possible. That works.
So for coaches, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about like what kind of I guess I'm just asking for like a vague position description or something for that person. For our programs, we usually, or well, we do require people to have a grant coordinator, but that is a really different type of position. So I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit more on what that coach would do or what schools would want to look for in that coach.
Okay, that question is so good. I'm not even going to answer it now because I want to do a good job of it next week. Cliffhanger, right? No, but because it is such a good idea, like I personally, my skills over the past decades has been in fitting however it goes. So I know I could do this, but your question is to articulate it. And I want to do some research and find out what the definition of it is. And I would first turn to New Zealand, where they hire people to actually be those facilitators. So the answer will be next week. And if you can't make it, the answer will be through Feet First, and we'll get that back to you. But I think the question of what's a job description look like for someone who might take this on, we should have had it already, but sorry, we will. Good question. Thank you. And
Thanks.
Aaron.
Sorry, I left it till the end.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, I left it till the end.
No, you're ahead. It's for next week. So you're like early and I like it. If you would email me, I will definitely email it to you beforehand. And then it's, even if you can't make the next one, you're going to hear your answer. But next week I will share that. It's a good question. And it's not just going to be one job description. There's going to be a range of what it might be. Anyone else got a question I can't answer? Those are my favorite. Well, Rob,
Sorry, I did end up having a question. I was going to say it seems like maybe some of us don't actually have a lot of experience with this. So if you in future sessions could share some more stories about what you've done and what that looked like. It seems like maybe this is pretty young and we don't have a lot of like, here's what I've done already to share. It sounds like maybe a lot of us are here to be like getting ideas. So that would be my hope for future ones.
good. Well, then with that in mind, the others are less structured. I can give more examples at the beginning. I didn't know, I mean, if people were already doing it, I didn't want to, come in and say, let me tell you everything. But if you want to hear more stories, I could easily do that for the next time. If you have any suggestions of under scenarios that you're interested or versus just, I want to hear 5 stories, then we can do that. But let me know. The idea is that the next session is sort of follows from where this one brought us. I mean, not surprisingly, we are modeling the engagement model of, we don't know where we're ending up. We know what our goal is, but our strategy, our path will be determined by the participants. With that in mind, I think you could probably end the recording. And if anyone wants to ask one